You probably started your business based on a need you had, and you feel like you're your own target customer. You have to go out and talk to the people and understand their thinking and how they perceive it. So that's really important, and something that a lot of people leave out of their price setting thought process is the customer, and you can't.
For too long, talented experts with a service-based business like coaches, consultants, and freelancers have been losing out to the often inferior competition, and for just one reason. They struggle to communicate the true value of their offer and therefore fail to attract the right people and opportunities into their business. This is made all the more challenging if you have a quieter personality, or you are already feeling a bit intimidated and overwhelmed by everything that goes into marketing your business. If you can relate, I am glad that you're here, because I believe that value whispering can help. It's the art of getting to know your true value, then weaving this through every interaction so you can naturally stand apart from your competitors, feel aligned in everything that you do, and have an impact that matters. It's marketing made simple, straightforward, and impactful. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, and I'm excited to be your guide in mastering the art of value whispering. Today, I am excited to welcome back to the show my very good friend, Janene Liston, a.k.a. the Pricing Lady. What price to put on your products is always a big challenge for business owners of all sizes and stages. So today we're going to be looking at, what do you need to know to get your pricing right? Is there such a thing as the right pricing? Should it be high or low? And what is Janene's recommendation for small businesses? And importantly, or I feel importantly, because I think it's what's always on my mind when I'm pricing, and I know for my clients it's a big consideration as well, is how do you price fairly? And Janene is going to really challenge us on what fair pricing really means. So I can't wait for you to get Janene's advice. But before we dive into that conversation, I want to invite you to join the Dream Clients Club. It's the free community that accompanies this show and your business growth. It's where we continue to discuss the themes from today's show, but also where you can attend live weekly masterclasses all around marketing and mindset with me, and access other business growth tools, training, and challenges, and be part of a wonderfully supportive community of like minds. You can find the Dream Clients Club by visiting melittacampbell.com/club. The best part is that, just like this podcast, it's completely free and packed full of practical ideas to support your business growth. So come and join us at melittacampbell.com/club. Meantime, let's welcome Janene. Hi, Janene. It's great to have you with us today.
I'm super excited to be here with you, Melitta. Thanks for having me.
Me too. And I think we are going to have such a juicy discussion. You've been on the podcast before talking about pricing strategy and confidence, but today we're going to dive into what is a fair price for your products and services. And I think that's just such an interesting way of thinking about it, because that's what we all want to be. We don't want to put out, we like the idea of saying, hey, let's charge like 100 grand for our products, but is that really fair? Does that feel right on the inside? So I think we're going to have such a great discussion about that. But before we dive into all of that, I'd love it if you could share with the audience your journey to become the pricing lady.
Yeah, I would gladly do so. So I started my career actually as an engineer. And after 3 years of designing buildings, I left that and went into product management. The first thing they did was they handed me a price list, and it was more than 20 years old. And I had zero, I think I was like 26 at the time. So I had very little commercial experience, but enough to know that there was something wrong with that. And that was my first foray into pricing without really having any experience or know-how into it. Fast forward many years, I came to Switzerland with the same company. And when I decided to stay in Switzerland was when I got a job as a global pricing manager. And during that time, I got a certification as a certified pricing professional. And yes, you can be certified as a pricing professional. I think I was one of the first 40 or 50 people globally to have the certification. And from that point on, it was all pricing all the time in my career. So that was, I think, 2006 when I got, or 2004 when I took the job, and 2008 when I got the third certification. And then fast forward a few more years, I went through a burnout and left the corporate world. And when I was trying to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, I realized that I wanted to do something that helped people, a different group of people. So, I feel that small business owners struggle a lot and have a lot of disadvantages because there aren't always, or there haven't always been in the past, the same level of resources available to them as they're building their businesses as there are for large multinationals. And pricing is one area where they haven't had that support. And I knew I loved pricing and helping people with that. And that was why I decided to start my business, although it was a combination of things, as you know, when I first started. But I really decided to land on the pricing piece and work with small business owners, startups, and entrepreneurs to help them build more sustainably profitable businesses, but also to help them have prices that they feel confident delivering to their customers and asking their customers and clients to invest in.
Yeah, it's such a fundamental decision, isn't it? And I've really enjoyed our conversations over the years, because my first induction into pricing, my first job, I worked for a small company. I was reporting direct to the CEO, and he was a brilliant mentor. But when it came to pricing, his advice was, okay, we add on 15%, and then that's the price. But we say the price to the customer, and if they say, okay, then we say plus VAT. And if they say, oh, that's quite expensive, we say, oh, it includes VAT. And that was his pricing strategy.
Which is one way to go.
It's one way, yeah. But it's been really interesting, as I say, in our discussions, to learn that there is a complete strategy behind our pricing, and the difference that even just a 1% increase or a 1% discount, more importantly, can impact on your business. And I know for a lot of people, saying that price at the end, it's such a fear. And then they just discount before the client's even said anything. It's like, oh, and I can throw in this and I'll add on that. And then suddenly we're working for not just for free, but for minus money. So getting that pricing right and the confidence, I think, is so, so important. And I love what you're putting out there right now, which is the fair pricing formula. Can I ask you, what is a fair price?
Yeah, this is a great question. And if you don't mind, I'd like to start with a short story that helps people to understand where this answer comes from. So I had a client quite a few years ago who came to me with a startup, and she was struggling. She had done a lot of work on pricing on her own, and we were going through it. I said, show me your thought process. How'd you come up with this? And she goes, I just want a fair price. And I said, okay. And she goes, I pay my vendors fairly. I pay my staff fairly. I pay the people who produce my product fairly. I pay my partners fairly. And I said, okay, are you missing anything from that formula? And she knew, obviously I wouldn't ask the question if she wasn't. And I said, yeah, but in all of your financials, you're not paying yourself fairly. She wasn't actually paying herself a wage in her own business. And so her prices were based on a set of assumptions that had left that out completely. So one of the components of a fair price is profitability. It has to be profitable enough for you. Yeah. And enough is determined by you, not by me, not by you, Melitta, not by anybody else. It's really got to be determined what is enough for you. A fair price also has to be related to the value of what your offer brings, whether it's a product, a service, or a software. And then the third component is that enough people have to be willing to pay for it. So with those three components is my definition, based on my experience, of what a fair price really is. So profitable enough for you, enough people are willing to pay for it, and it's related to the value of your offer.
Yeah. I love that structure, and I love that message don't forget to price yourself into the formula. And also, I was having a discussion with someone recently, and when I was a consultant, one of the earliest pieces of advice I got was, don't just price for the time you're sitting down working, price for the time that you're thinking and planning and all of these other things around it as well. So, think holistically around you and what you're putting into that and what is therefore fair for you as well.
Right.
But how can we know? We tend to make assumptions, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but the people I want to work with can't afford this, or no one's ever going to pay that amount for it.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we be sure that the pricing we're setting is accurate for the market, that people are willing to pay that, and kind of bypass our own assumptions?
Right. So you have to do the work. So I always say, and I know, Melitta, you've heard this probably 1,000 times over the last few years, but pricing is rooted in a deep understanding of the customer. And what most people do, so your service-based businesses tend to say, I do this really cool thing. Everybody else is charging this much. I'll charge 10% less. And product-based businesses tend to do, I make this really cool thing. It costs me this much to produce it. I'll add 10% margin, and that's my price. Now, if you think of those thought processes, they leave out the customer completely. The customer doesn't even come into that thought process. So you can't even understand how much people are willing to pay without thinking about the customer. And you even have to take it a step further. You can't just think about them, because even though you probably started your business based on a need you had, and you feel like you're your own target customer, you have to go out and talk to the people and understand their thinking and how they perceive it. So that's really important, and something that a lot of people leave out of their price setting thought process is the customer. And you can't. Well, you can, but then it's going to be harder for you to feel confident about the price that you choose.
Yeah. And so it's all about the customer, know your customer, which is what we should be focusing on for everything in our business, and understand
Right.
the value, but as they perceive it.
As they perceive it, yes.
Yeah.
And the only way to understand that is through conversations with them, surveys, interviews, asking questions on social media, to your email list, and really understanding that, because without that dialogue, you're just guessing. I call it pin the tail the donkey pricing. Right? So you just put on a blindfold and you're just trying to find the tail end there. It's the same if you're not really understanding your customer, then you can't really understand that. Now, I have to be absolutely clear here that there's no mathematical calculation that you can do that will give you a price that everybody will be willing to pay. It doesn't work like that. What you do is you go through a thought process and you put the right information into that thought process: the customer, the offer, the value, the marketplace, and the profit. You have a clear process on how to do that. You have the right input and information. Sometimes you're using assumptions and then you go and test them. Then you're taking the information out to come up with a price, and then you have to go and test it. I would love to say there's a magical calculation out there, but there just isn't, because the things that you're basing it upon are based upon human behavior, and human behavior isn't always so predictable.
Yeah. And I guess knowing your ideal clients will make all the difference, because I know I've worked for companies, for example, who have paid for training, and they will say, it's a maximum of £500 per person per day that we're going to pay. And that's kind of fixed, and that's what they're looking for. However, I've also worked for companies who won't even look at a company who's charging less than £6,000 per day, because their perception is, well, we want the best for our clients, and we're willing to pay for that. So the same business in the same industry can have very different price points. And so understanding who your ideal clients are will make all the difference, because if you're assuming that everybody pays that £500, you're discounting all of these people who are willing to pay and will only pay more, for example.
Right. It always goes back to who. I mean, I joke about this on my own show, but the answer to any pricing question is it depends. Because So really, and it's usually because it depends on, first and foremost, who you're targeting. Even if you're going to apply a pricing strategy of being a follower, follow the market leader or follow the competition, you still have to make sure that for what you offer, people are willing to pay that, to make sure that that price is profitable for you, because your cost structure may be completely different. So it may not be profitable enough for you. Even if you choose one of those 5 steps to be kind of what you lean into as the main driver of your pricing, you still have to check the other areas.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're following these industry leaders, they have a huge audience. So they can do these memberships for like peanuts per year. But for us to do that with a smaller number of people, it just doesn't work. It just, the numbers don't stack up. Yeah.
Right.
So talking about that, is there at different stages of business where you need to reflect on your pricing? Is there a point where you should, don't worry about your pricing until you get to this stage, or should it be like the first thing you think about? Where does that thinking come in?
My take on this is that if you want to, say, test out your business model a bit before you start doing too much work, then you need pricing, because there are only 4 things that allow you to calculate profitability: price, volume, fixed costs, and variable costs. And you have to have some understanding of those things in order to test out if you have a business model that can be profitable. And price is one of the most important of those, but you need all 4. So in that context, I would say that in order to test your model, to talk to potential investors, to talk to potential business partners, and just to get an idea, does this even have validity as a business where I can make profit? You have to look at it earlier rather than later. Yeah, of course, you need some information. You need to have an idea of, what the problem is and what your offer is to solve that problem, even at a high level, so that you can understand the value of that offer to them, and therefore have an idea of how much they might be willing to pay for it.
Yeah. And I think you have to start somewhere, don't you? Yeah. And what are your thoughts on that topic of people who think, I need to start somewhere. I need to kind of test my concept. Therefore, I will do some beta testing and drop the price really, really low. Is that a wise move? Does that help, or does it shoot you in the foot a little bit for later?
So we call this a penetration strategy. And the formal definition of a penetration strategy is you go in low, gain market share fast, and quickly raise your price. But people implement such a strategy the wrong way. They go in low and they get stuck there. And even if you get some volume and some traction, you're developing a market that is willing to pay a very low price. And the question is, as you raise your price, are you going to lose those people or take those people with you? And what a lot of people find out is that they actually have to redevelop a new market, because the price that they need in order to make the business profitable is so much higher that the market they developed at that low price is completely useless, in a sense, to them at the higher price. So then they have to start kind of all over again at this new price. And that's one of the reasons it can be so hard to make that jump. If you can get that market share fast, if you can get a lot of people in fast and then make that price change fast, sometimes, there are businesses for whom that works. My feeling is that for small businesses, a low price strategy is rarely the right way to go, unless that is the value, the main value that your target group is looking for. If your target group is looking for the cheapest thing out there, then a low price strategy should, in theory, work. But for most small businesses, it's very difficult to maintain a low price strategy, because you have to have the lowest cost basis, and you have to continue to have the lowest cost basis, even as things grow. And it's very hard for a small business to maintain that.
Yeah, especially if you are a small business like a lot of this audience where you want to serve people and have transformations, you want to add value, you want to go all in for your clients and give them an incredible experience, and that costs. So,
well, and that experience is of value,
yeah.
Then you're reaching out to a different target group, right? The one that wants that experience, where the lowest price isn't what's of value to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to putting out that low cost, feels comfortable. It's easy. We know people are going to say yes. Putting up a higher cost that is a more accurate reflection of our time and the value that we really offer is a bit scary.
Right.
What advice would you give to someone who is feeling like, okay, yeah, actually, I don't think my prices reflect my value at all. I really need to go up a bit. But we've just said they're probably going to lose a lot of the clients they already have because of that. And how do they feel comfortable with that? How do they feel, yeah, actually, it is fair to put my prices up to this level?
So two things. First, I'm going to very gently call you out on something you just said for the benefit of the listeners. You started calling the prices costs. Which, if you think of them as costs, so do your customers and your clients. And it's better to always refer to your prices as either a price or an investment. So it was probably just a slip of the tongue, but I want to make sure that people understand that, because I've had clients who the offer they send their clients says cost offer, and it made me want to break down in tears and cry. I think you can understand how the wording is really important in that context. So with that aside, how can you make that change? So if you're feeling uncertain about the change that you're making, one of the things that you can do, there are different ways to raise prices. You can just, change the price on the offer that you have. Why not create a second offer and have that offer be slightly higher priced? If you create a second offer that's similar, but you give people two options and you make the prices between the two fairly similar, like close, then you'll naturally get more people to pay the slightly higher price. There's ways to raise your prices without just, slapping 25% or 50% or whatever you want on there. You can bring in new offers. And one of the things I always tell people is most people are very creative when it comes to finding ways to reduce the price of their offer. I encourage you to be just as creative, or if not more creative, in finding ways to raise the price of the offer. So bring in a new offer. Call your old offer something different. It can be 95% the same thing. Call it something new and change the price on that and fade out the old one. I mean, there's different ways to do it. So that's one way that you can do it, is by changing your offer. If you can't change your offer and you just need to, find, let's say, the courage, understanding the value that your offer brings in a quantifiable number is going to help put your pricing to context. So here's what I mean. If your offer can help people save 2 hours a week, and your customers are people who maybe have their own businesses and they charge, 100, I'm just using 100 because I can do the math really easy. They charge, they charge out their time at $100 an hour. Then that they can earn potentially $200 more an hour if you're saving them that 2 hours of time every week. So if your offer is $2,000, then it would take them X number of months to get a return on the investment at a minimum, just based on that one element. So it puts your price into context. And I find with my clients, it helps them feel more confident about what they're asking people to pay or invest in when they're, taking their services or buying their products or software.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And do you think people justify the price that they pay for things in the same way? I know sometimes I'm like, if I invest in this, well, if I just get this one result, then it's paid for itself. Is that just me? Is that normal how people think about what they're willing to invest in a price as well? Does it work both ends?
Some people do. It really depends on the target customer. I hate to say that again. Some people think that way. It depends on what it is, because some things are very much an emotional decisions and some things are just a habit. Like when you go to the grocery store to buy apples, do you sit there and calculate in your head what it costs the farmer to grow it and then the shipping company to get it to the grocery store retailer and then the retailer to put it on the shelf? No, because we'd all be standing there with our phones out calculating numbers in the Apple aisle, right? So it depends on the type of purchase. When it comes to B2B, you'll find people tend to think that way more naturally because they really are making an investment and they're expecting to get some sort of return on it. So it can depend. But as the person with the offer, it doesn't hurt to ask the question, well, if you do this with me, how much time do you think you can save?
Yeah.
And what does that time represent to you in a financial number?
Yeah.
If they
When
come
you
up
get,
with a number of 5,000 a year and your offer is 2,000, then they've actually stated the business case themselves for making the investment.
yeah. And you get a bonus there as well. If you like, if you could get this result within this time, what would that do for you? What would be the value? And then note down what the words that they use.
Right.
And you can use those words in your marketing. They write your marketing for you. Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely.
So as we said at the beginning, get to know your ideal clients, ask those questions, make some assumptions, but test those.
You have to make assumptions. And at some point you do have to test them out. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I have to have everything done before I start working with you. And I'm like, well, if you wait too long, you miss the opportunity. And what a lot of companies do is they will end up missing it. And then all of a sudden they have to slap a price on before they go to market real quick. And then they end up with a price that hasn't been thought through well and usually misses the mark in one way or the other.
Yeah.
So you assume you'll make some assumptions. That's just the natural thing. And we don't know everything. I mean, I can interview 10 customers and get 10 different answers. I still have to, extract that information and make some assessments about it and some assumptions about it. But if I don't do that work, then I'm just guessing. So an assumption based on information that you've gotten from people is much better than just guessing. Yep.
Yeah. So why do you think it is so difficult for so many small businesses to come up with a fair price?
Yeah. So there's a few reasons. One is that nobody taught you this. Yeah. Nobody pulled you aside when you were in the third grade and said, hey, Melitta, when you have your business later on in life, you're going to need to know how to set a price. This is how you do it. Nobody did that. They don't teach that in MBA. They teach strategies, but they don't tell you how to go about and finding the right price. So first of all, how could you? Second of all, your experience with pricing, most people, when they start a business, their only experience with pricing to date is what they know from being a consumer, which is the retail industry. And the retail industry's pricing strategy is to move inventory. That's really it. So if you take the strategies that are used to move inventory in an industry that's just like rotating through it at record pace and apply that to your small business, it doesn't work. Why would it? Yeah. And then the third reason is really, well, let's say there's 3 or 4. The third one is really where to start. Yeah. But the fourth one has to do with mindset. Yeah. Most people have issues with money, success, and worthiness that get in the way. So even I would say that pricing is 1 part competence and 1 part confidence. And you can gain some confidence with the competence by understanding how, right? But there's a part related to the confidence that only comes from mindset, which is your relationship with money, success, and worthiness. And as human beings, we have a whole load of baggage that we tend to carry related to those things. These can be statements that I hear are, I can't do pricing. I'm not good at math. Why would anybody pay me that? How can I possibly charge that? There's just a whole mess of them. And I would say with those 4 things are why it's difficult. And for one person, it may be more one than the other. But I think most people don't really have much experience with pricing and don't know where to start.
Yeah, exactly. And with the retail, that mass experience that we've all had is just they get their profit from the sheer volumes that they put out there. And we can't do that as a small business owner. It just doesn't make sense at all. So going for those higher prices, building the mindset and the confidence and strategy around that seems like the way to go.
Yeah, no, it really is. And this is a myth. Most people have an assumption, I guess I call it an assumption, that if they lower the price, more people will buy and they'll make more money. But they don't understand, because they don't do the work, they don't do the math. They don't understand if I lower my price by 10%, they don't do the math to find out how much more volume they need. And the numbers are huge. If you have let's say you're a product-based business and your gross profit, which is your price minus your cost to manufacture, is 40%. Price is 100, costs are 60, so your gross profit is 40. If you reduce the price by 10%, you need 33% more volume just to break even on gross profit. Where in the heck is that going to come from? And how are you going to sustain that? Because once you lower your price, your competition might do the same thing, and then you lose the market share you gain. So you have to be really, really careful about assuming a lower price will automatically make you more profitable. It very rarely happens. And in a small business, of course, for the reasons we stated before, it's hard. For service-based business, the numbers are smaller. So 33, it's more like, say, if it's purely service-based business, it's very close to 10%. But let's say you have some variable costs that you have in your service-based business. So I have a tool that I use to show people this, and you can only do it 10% gross profit or 90% gross profit as the highest. And I think it's still 16% additional volume in order to break even on profit, which is still a lot.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we do just, I'll discount, but then you don't compensate correctly. And as we said earlier, if you bring your prices down, you're going to start attracting the clients who aren't going to be with you for the journey. They're just in it because, it's cheaper at the minute. You'll get people like my mum who will just buy anything because, it's got a sale ticket on it, I'll buy it. And then the next thing that's on sale, she'll go and buy that. She's not loyal at all to anything apart from price. And those aren't the people that will build your business. Right. Leave those to the retailers. Yeah.
And there are discounts that can be valuable, but a vast majority of the discounting that we see in small businesses is unnecessary in the end, in my opinion.
Yeah. If people understand the value of what you're offering, they'll pay for that. And I think in times like now where there's a lot of uncertainty, people tend to think, people won't pay. And my experience, and I've been through several recessions now, and also my studies in marketing and everything, is that's not true. In times of recession, people have less risk. So if they understand the value, if they believe in the brand, if they believe in you and trust you, they will be happy to pay, and they'll pay more rather than risk that investment. So building up that credibility, the positioning, everything else will really support that pricing strategy for you as well.
There just may be fewer people in the pot to begin with, right? Because people are being more selective about how they spend their money. And this is where I saw a lot of people over the last few years getting it wrong. They saw, the purchases falling, so they thought, I'll lower my price to get more people to buy. But because the pot of people that were even interested in buying something was already smaller, that wasn't going to help the situation. It wasn't going to shift things enough because there just weren't enough people to do it. So discounts can help, but they should always have a solid business reason behind it. My opinion is, it's Valentine's Day, let's have a sale. That's not a valid business reason. It's nice, but it's not necessarily a valid business reason. So, okay, what is it you're trying to get out of that? Are you trying to get 5 new clients? Okay, then you try that once. If it doesn't work, you adjust some things, you might try it again. But if by the 3rd time it doesn't work, then you move on to something else. Right? And there should always be a trade-off of value People tend to think that when someone says that's too expensive, the only thing they can do is change the price. Actually, they can change the value. They can take things out, put things in, make them a different offer. They can do all different kinds of things. And so I encourage people to play with the value side of things more than the price side.
Great advice. Which made me think, when you mentioned that Valentine's Day offer, instead of making it, oh, here's my program at a discount, here's like a special only available Valentine's Day offer, and make like a mini version of something or something completely different to bring those new people in, but without having to go into that dangerous discounting, and keeping that value balance in your business as well.
I like playing with, I call it the price value scale, and I like playing with the value side much better.
Yeah, that actually sounds quite fun.
I think pricing is fun. I know not everybody else does, but it is, when you think about, okay, how can I be more creative in the way that I raise prices? Or how can I be more creative in terms of playing with the value side of my offer? There are a lot of ways to be creative. Pricing isn't just about the math. It's actually about the psychology in large part. And when we're talking about this, being creative here and there, we're actually talking more about the psychology part of pricing.
Gosh, if only we had more time to dig into that as well. Janene, we've talked a lot about the mistakes people make, what to look out for. Are there any stories you can share about what's happened to businesses once they get it right?
Yeah. There's lots of them. One common thing that I see with my clients is they feel a sense of confidence and resilience around their pricing. So they're more confident to try things out, and they're getting results. They're getting more clients at higher prices usually. In a few cases, clients have needed to lower their price, but that's the exception. But what I see is sort of like this resilience. They're like, well, I tried that and it didn't work. Okay, so now I move on to the next thing. So they're not so afraid to try things. And it makes them feel like more of a business owner, because they're making more strategic decisions. And through trying different things, then they're bringing more value into their business and more value to what they're doing for their customers. So it has this knock-on effect that it changes how they feel about the decisions they're making around pricing, but not just around pricing, about what to offer and who to offer it to and how to offer it. And all, on top of just raising prices and getting better prices for customers, they're actually doing more in their business to drive their business in the right direction. And they're so much more aware of the impact those decisions potentially have on their profitability. So it's a little bit less of a specific story. I most recently had a client who was able to close a massive deal for them. It was like a 3-year deal for something like $700,000 a year or something like that. Something that they really weren't thinking was that big when we first started working. But then once we started looking at who they were targeting and the value of the offer to those people, it changed their perspective, and they were able to offer it in ways and at prices that they hadn't thought of before. And the client very much appreciated that, and therefore they got the business. So for me, it's really exciting to see when people get those results, whether it's charging 10% more for what you offer or closing big deals like that. It just changes the way that you think about what you're offering and how you can offer it to people.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so important to be able to step into that role of the CEO of your business. That's when you start to get control. That's when you start to make better decisions from a business perspective and not really a personal thing. So you've got your pricing strategy now. You've got a new way of thinking about your pricing. You've got permission to go out there, play with the value balance within your business, and find that fair price that reflects the real value that you're putting out there, and makes the client feel good that they've made a wise decision as well. Sometimes having that higher price, I think, makes people feel better than a low price. Sometimes
your price should stretch both you and the customer. Yeah. So there should be a little bit of tension in there for everyone. But being aligned There's, I think we've talked about this before, the two types of fear. There's the fear that's called pashad. It's a very negative fear. It makes you feel like hiding and whatever. And then there's a fear called yara, which is like a very expansive, what you feel when you're stepping outside your comfort zone, and it's exciting. And so the tension or fear that you feel around the price and your customer feels should be that expansive yara kind of fear. Doesn't mean it's not scary. It just means that it's the right kind of fear and it's pushing you both forward.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I haven't come across that before. That's unusual.
Tara Moore,
Ah.
Playing Big. I love that book.
Yeah. I have read it. I must have skipped over that bit or fell asleep on my sunbed or something.
And one last thing is that pricing is really, it's less of an activity. And it's more a way, I say, of being or behaving in your business. So it's actually something that you're always every decision that you make in your business potentially could have an impact. If you're going to target this customer or that one, or make this offer or that one, or go with a membership site or a group program, whatever you do, all those things have an impact on how you price and what price you can or should offer. And therefore, it's more just a way of thinking and looking at the world inside your business, as opposed to a one-time activity of finding this, needle in the haystack price that will make everyone pay.
Yeah. Brilliant advice. Janene, you've covered so much already. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that the audience really need to know or consider when creating a fair price for their products or services?
I think this is less related to a fair price, but is also a very important point about what pricing really is it's how you set, get, and manage prices. So setting or finding that fair price is just one piece. It's important because if you can't set the price or don't know how, then you're not going to feel confident about the prices that you have. Let's say you understand how to set the price. If you can't get the price, if people aren't willing to pay it, or if you can't sell it, if a customer asks you what you charge and you stumble over what you're saying and lose the sale, if you can't get the price, then you have no income, right? And then over time, your prices are going to need to change and adapt and be adjusted. And if you're not managing those prices, you're going to not have the information to make the right changes at the right time and in the right way. So you have to consider that pricing is more than just setting the price. You actually have to follow through to be able to get the price and manage those prices and change them at the right times in the right way.
Amazing. Thank you so much. If people want to know more about their pricing and working with you and more about your fair pricing formula, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, just head on over to thepricinglady.com and you'll find everything there, or find me on LinkedIn and connect with me there.
Brilliant. The Pricing Lady. Nice and easy.
Pricing Lady. Nice and easy.
Janene, thank you so much for sharing. Wow, just so much insight. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have found this episode valuable and are all set to feel confident about your pricing and what fair pricing really means for your business, your clients, your future in your business. If you have enjoyed this episode and find it valuable, then do share this episode with your friends and business besties. And I'd love it if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps the show to get found by more business owners so more people can benefit from all the wisdom that's been shared on the show. And again, I would love for you to come and join us at the Dream Clients Club and to welcome you at our next value session. It's every Wednesday at 3 p.m. European times. That's 2 p.m. in the UK, other times in other places. And next week, we're going to be looking at how can you talk about the benefit of choosing your business or your offer over the competition in a way that feels natural, engaging, valuable, and not at all pushy or arrogant. So I would love for you to come and join us. You can find all the details and be part of that community at melittacampbell.com/club. There are a lot more tools, tips, and insights coming up for you in the next episode. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the value in that show or future episodes. I'm Melitta Campbell, your business coach and value whisperer, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye.